Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, so we all have this picture in our heads, right? This golden vignette of what a quote-unquote good life actually looks like. We're thinking peace, meaning, connection, joy, the whole shebang. But let's be real, so many of us struggle to actually live it. We end up chasing these vague ideals based on what society expects of us. We think, oh, if I just get more money or a better job, that's going to deliver happiness. And then we feel totally discontent when those things just fall short. But what if the problem isn't your circumstances at all? What if the issue is that you don't actually know which parts of your life need fixing? Well, let's figure that out together today, setting the stage for a highly practical, immediate self-evaluation.
So get this number, 85%. The author of our source text actually took a whole battery of psychological tests to figure out his degree of self-deception, basically trying to figure out why he was just so miserable. And when the results came back, his counselor told him he scored an 85%. At first, he thought, hey, great, that's a solid B, right? But no, she quickly corrected him. It meant he was actually lying to himself 85% of the time. That's huge. We walk around thinking we know exactly what's going on in our own minds, but man, that is a serious misconception. Our minds constantly filter our thoughts, producing these cognitive distortions that literally separate us from reality. Basically, we are all incredibly adept at self-deception.
And because we're deceiving ourselves so much of the time, we end up filtering out reality. It leaves us with this vague, kind of unnameable tension and dissatisfaction. Our source actually calls this the perennial struggle. As Henry David Thoreau so famously put it, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. Wow, it's that deep, lifelong tension inside us, you know? That constant pull between who we are right now and who we desperately want to be. And it shows up as recurring frustrations, self-sabotage, and just this nagging sense that something essential is missing, even when your life looks totally successful on paper. We end up chasing all these distractions just to fill the void, but that quiet desperation, it just remains.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the leaky bucket problem. Why life feels out of balance.
To really wrap our heads around this idea of balance, let's look at a brilliant visual metaphor from Jonathan Fields. Imagine your fundamental human needs as buckets, okay? Buckets that you have to keep filled up. So you've got a bucket for vitality. That's your physical and mental health. You have a bucket for connection, your relationships, your sense of belonging. And you've got a bucket for contribution, basically using your talents in a meaningful way. But there is a major catch here. These buckets leak. The leaky bucket rule states that your emptiest bucket will literally drag the others down with it. Think about it. If you ignore one part of your life, that specific bucket empties out, and suddenly your overall happiness just plummets. You absolutely cannot compensate for an empty connection bucket by just overfilling your contribution bucket at work. It doesn't work that way. If one part of your life is out of balance, the whole shebang is out of balance. The buckets never lie.
Section 2, the Self-Rated Wellness Scale, a practical tool for clarity.
So here's the million-dollar question. How do we cut through that 85% self-deception gap? How do we figure out exactly which of our buckets are leaking? Well, we need a tool, something to measure our life satisfaction accurately, completely bypassing those cognitive distortions that trick us into thinking everything is fine. And that brings us to the Self-Rated Wellness Scale. Now listen, this is a completely unscientific self-evaluation, but it is an incredibly practical and powerful way to gain an immediate visual snapshot of your current life satisfaction. By explicitly rating 14 highly specific areas of your life on a scale from 1 to 10, it makes it completely obvious which buckets of your life are empty and require your immediate attention. It takes that vague feeling of quiet desperation and replaces it with cold, hard, concrete data about your own life.
So here's how we're going to use it. And I really want you to actively play along with me right now. Okay? For each of the life areas we're about to look at, I want you to mentally rate your happiness over the last month on a scale from 1 to 10. A score of 1 means you are very unhappy in that area, and a 10 means you are very happy. Just ask yourself honestly, hey, how happy am I with this specific area of my life right now? Let's break it down.
Section 3, your 14 life areas, scoring your buckets.
All right, we are going to look at 14 specific life areas, and this brilliantly illustrates exactly where you stand. So I highly encourage you to be brutally honest with yourself here. Remember, our goal is to bypass that self-deception. And listen, if you find yourself giving out low scores, do not panic. Seriously, low scores are not a failure, they're just a starting point. They show you exactly where the leaks are so you can start repairing them. So let's start with your practical and physical needs. Give yourself a quick mental score from 1 to 10 for each of these. First, How satisfied are you with your job, education, or retirement situation? What about your finances? Are there any legal issues weighing on you right now? How about your weight, health, and exercise routine? Are you moving your body daily? Now, score your sleep. Are you actually getting enough deep rest? Rate your free time and hobbies. And finally, be honest about your drinking or drug use. Take a second. Notice if any of these numbers are alarmingly low, because if they are, that is an empty bucket dragging your vitality down.
Okay, now let's move over to your emotional and relational life. Again, give me a rating from 1 to 10 for each of these. Friend relationships, family relationships, what about your romantic relationships? How happy are you with your sex life? Score your overall emotional life, and then your communication with others. And lastly, your spirituality, your connection to something greater than yourself. Take a good look at those numbers, because if you're feeling that quiet desperation we talked about earlier, I practically guarantee you just gave a very low score to one or more of these relational buckets.
Section 4. Fixing the empty buckets. Moving from awareness to action.
So now that you've mentally scanned those 14 areas, you probably have a really clear picture of where you're struggling. You've officially found your empty buckets. The mystery of your discontent, it's solved. But here's the thing. Awareness alone isn't going to patch the leak. We need to pivot from simply knowing what's wrong to actually taking actionable steps to fix it. Thankfully, our source text provides a highly effective, short-term strategy called the RADAR method. That stands for Reflect, Describe, and Respond. It is a structured way to practice self-reflection and growth, ensuring you don't just react impulsively to your problems, but actually handle them intentionally. Let's walk through these 3 steps together. Step 1 is reflect. When you look at one of your low scores, let's say your finances or maybe your family relationships, you need to pause and assess your current state. Notice what emotions, thoughts, or even physical sensations pop up when you consider this empty bucket. Ask yourself, hey, why am I avoiding this? What am I actually feeling right now? You have to allow yourself to observe what's happening beneath the surface. But, and this is absolutely crucial, do this completely without judgment. Do not berate yourself. Just reflect.
Okay, moving on to step 2, which is describe. Once you've taken the time to reflect, you need to clearly articulate the issue. You can write it down in a journal or literally just speak it out loud. The main key here is to use neutral, highly specific language to label the emotions or pinpoint the exact problem. Basically, you are just gathering the facts of the situation so you know exactly what you're dealing with. You aren't blaming others, you aren't blaming your circumstances, and you definitely aren't playing the victim. You are just plainly stating the reality of the leak in your bucket.
And finally, step 3 is respond. This is where the rubber meets the road. Now you take thoughtful, intentional action based on what you've just discovered, making sure that your response aligns with your core values. Maybe that means breaking a massive, overwhelming task down into manageable little steps. Or maybe it means finally having a difficult conversation using clear communication. Honestly, sometimes the very best response is simple to pause and reevaluate. As Kat Timpf is quoted saying in the text, "There is no shame in not being okay, but the healing is your responsibility." You absolutely must act deliberately to patch your own bucket.
So that leaves us with the ultimate question. Through the self-rated wellness scale, you've completely bypassed your own self-deception. You've looked at 14 very specific areas of your life, and you've found your empty buckets. You even have the RADAR method to start fixing them. But are you actually willing to do the work to fill them? Because a good life doesn't just happen by accident. It's built through clear thinking, good habits, and the absolute courage to face reality. The tools are sitting right in front of you. Now, it's time to get to work. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.